Gaslighting the harm. Tinea Versicolor is referred to as a benign and harmless yeast infection, known primarily for causing discoloration and mild discomfort. Yet paradoxically, many of the same researchers who claim it to be harmless also document its potential to cause itching, scarring, and psychological stress like depression and lowered self-esteem. So the real question is, at what point does harm begin? This question becomes ever more important, taking into account the true nature of the Malassezia yeast. The Malassezia yeast, which are centrally involved in Tinea Versicolor, have been linked to a plethora of harmful diseases. Researchers have found their presence in conditions like Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, pancreatic and colon cancer, pulmonary disease, and even death by fungemia. In every scenario, the scientists have come to the same conclusion. The Malassezia yeasts are not passive bystanders. They are actively contributing to these conditions. Here is a framework. It is a simple diagram of those conditions that the Malassezia yeasts are involved in. And on the right-hand side, you will see just general symptoms that accompany these conditions. So for Alzheimer's, you could say cognitive decline. You could say memory loss. You could say brain fog. Pancreatic colon cancer, there's constipation, diarrhea, cramps, abdominal pains, bloody stool. Multiple sclerosis, inhibited motor skills, clumsy, dizziness, fatigue, laziness. These are all symptoms that are reported. And so Western medicine is currently portraying two different frameworks for one species of yeast infections. One where harm is present and one where harm is not. Since the Malassezia yeast contribute to all of these conditions, the question to ask is, could a person with chronic TB experience these symptoms that are associated with these diseases? And the next important question to ask would be, is chronic Tinea Versicolor a potential indicator of other serious health issues developing over time? Whereas you see two different frameworks, one where harmless Malassezia yeast live on the skin, and one where harmful Malassezia yeast live beneath the skin. Should it just be one framework, an integrated framework that would suggest considering all of these symptoms might be related to the yeast infection? This is a question that only a person with Tinea Versicolor can answer. When I just go back and I think about, when my skin was really severe, I had a lot of other issues, and I didn't have anyone pointing out some of these overlaps. Definitely, there was something cognitively different about me, and I would definitely say there was a lot of internal issues as well. I think the circulatory issues that come with pulmonary disease is something that gets overlooked in almost every other disease, but a very basic observation of circulatory issues is cold hand and cold feet. That's something that it's a response to something, and we're going to get into all of this towards the end of the video. But what do the researchers really say? Here's an article written in 2017, Multiple Sclerosis and Mixed Microbial Infections, Direct Identification of Fungi and Bacteria in Nervous Tissue. I'll just read to you what the researchers are saying. They say, although the precise etiology of multiple sclerosis remains unknown, the presence of infiltrates of immune cells in the focal lesions, as well as activation of micralgia in the central nervous system, has led to the suggestion that multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease. That was suggested in 2017. Let's jump down. They say an alternative hypothesis to explain the etiology of multiple sclerosis is that the disease is caused by microbial infection, and that was suggested in 2014. In this regard, two different theories have been put forward. One possibility is the immune reaction to a given infection triggers the activation of the immune system. We'll zoom down and it says, the second possibility is that the infection itself is responsible for focal lesions observed in the central nervous system. Along this line, several microbial infections are known to be chronic and progressive, and it is possible the relapse-remitting episodes typical of most multiple sclerosis patients correspond to infectious reactivation. I'm going to show you just a little bit more of what these researchers said in the study. And it says, of interest in some of the immunopositive regions, Yeast-like structures were located intracellularly. They could be clearly seen inside the nucleus, and even more strikingly, some hyphae could be found transverse in the nuclear membrane. And so they're showing you that the yeasts are moving beneath the surface of the skin. Here in the discussion, they say, in addition to this evidence, the clinical features of multiple sclerosis are consistent with the notion that microbial infections are the etiological agents of multiple sclerosis. For instance, the chronic and progressive symptoms of multiple sclerosis are consistent with the slow progression of many fungal infections. Also, fungal infections are prone to relapses if they remain untreated. Let's jump down a bit. And they say it is also possible that this neuroinflammation is a reaction to the microbial infections that induce demyelination and also destroy neurons. So they're showing you it is possible that the Malassezia yeast are occupying spaces and territories that are not seen with the naked eye. Here are some images of the central nervous system that they put in the study, and they have images of the yeast there. Here is their assessment of the average person with multiple sclerosis that they were able to do I believe it's an autopsy on. And so they found literally threefold times more than a person without multiple sclerosis. So just comparing, the controls do not have multiple sclerosis. And on the left, they do. And so we're clear, those skin lesions that you're seeing on people's skin are found threefold times more on a person with multiple sclerosis' central nervous system. I don't want this to disturb you, but this is just the truth of the matter. And yeah. So the following photo is portrayed to provoke a question of where Tinea Versicolor infections fall on the spectrum and not based on any factual evidence. This is just my question. Is a person with Tinea Versicolor vulnerable to experiencing the progressive symptoms accompanied with multiple sclerosis? So here I put a person with TV at the control level. That means they should, in theory, not have any of these accompanying symptoms. But what would happen if a person has one-fold times more than the normal? Would they start to feel some of those progressive symptoms of multiple sclerosis? Are there individuals out there at current time who have elevated levels of Malassezia present along their central nervous system? Are there people who are living with 2 times fold or 3-fold, the equivalent to what multiple sclerosis is, and also have Tinea Versicolor? I don't have the answer for that. And I think ultimately it's up for a person to investigate. And so the next one we're going to do is Alzheimer's. Infection of fungi and bacteria in brain tissue from elderly persons and patients with Alzheimer's disease. Ruth Alonso as well, 2018. And so he says, we have advanced the idea that disseminated fungal infection contributes to the etiology of Alzheimer's disease. Thus, we have demonstrated that fungal proteins and DNA are present in nervous tissues from Alzheimer's patients. And I have that word etiology here written. An etiological agent is known as a causative agent. It's any factor, whether biological, chemical, or physical, that can initiate or cause a disease or condition. Etiological. And so here in the polymicrobial infections and human diseases section, I'll read it to you. It says, the modification of the microbiota from the intestinal tract or from other parts of the human body can influence the development of a variety of diseases, such as multiple sclerosis, intestinal bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and autoimmune diseases. Then it says, here down at the bottom, it is possible that many of the diseases known as autoimmune diseases are in fact microbial infections that remain hidden to routine analytical tests. Nevertheless, the burden of these mycosis is not only higher in Alzheimer's brains, but also the percentages of representatives genera different from control subjects. Our results support the emerging picture that infection can increase throughout the lifetime of an individual, but it may not give rise to clinical symptoms if it remains below a given threshold. It is possible that the dysbiosis of the microbiota or the total microbiota due to diet, lifestyle, diminished immune system, among others, could trigger and increase fungal growth in the central nervous system leading to progressive Alzheimer's symptoms. My question is, again, where is the threshold? Where is that threshold that they're saying for progressive symptoms? Here is the percentage that they have for a person with Alzheimer's. Malassezia yeast is again at a 3-fold times more than young controls, young people, and elderly people who do not have Alzheimer's. So it's a clear infection, 300%. And so again, the same question could be asked. And this time, I'm not the only one suggesting these questions. This is a recent study that took place in 2024 by Bharat Naik and co. And so this is called From the Skin and Gut to the Brain, the Infectious Journey of the Human Commensal Fungus Malassezia and its Neurological Consequences. And so I'll read it to you. It says, this budding yeast is responsible for several diseases such as seborrheic dermatitis, atopic dermatitis, pityriasis versicolor, which is TB, Malassezia folliculitis, dandruff, and others. Here he says the exact role of Malassezia in these disorders is unknown, but its ability to infect human cells, travel through the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and reside along with the lipid-rich neuronal cells are potential mechanisms responsible for pathogenesis. This images will serve as a visual prompt to explore the idea once again of Tinea Versicolor existing on a spectrum in relation to Malassezia-related Alzheimer's disease. And the question is, are there any overlaps? Is there a person with a 1-fold more than normal that also has Tinea Versicolor? Is there a person with 2-fold more than normal and also has Tinea Versicolor? Are there people with Tinea Versicolor that have full-blown Alzheimer's? And so this bears a question of risk. Are there people at risk for experiencing this later down the line when we know that Tinea Versicolor is chronic and many people have a recurrent disseminated version that they have not been able to solve? What does this mean internally and for the future?